Shall we start? I think we shall start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Teach 250, Inspiring a More Perfect Union, on behalf of the Trust for the National Mall and the National Park Service. I am Bobby Caith, Product Manager for the National Mall Gateway. Thank you for everyone for being here during this holiday week. We're so excited to be here and talk to you about the National Mall, Veterans Day, and the National Mall Gateway. But before we start thinking about Thanksgiving, we'll be talking about Veterans Day and honoring our military. But before we get to that, welcome back to the National Park Service. We're so happy to have them here, and we have Ranger Bethany with us. Ranger Bethany Bajent. We are so excited that you are here. We are so excited your team's back. The Trust for the National Mall is a partner organization with the National Park Service. So for the last couple months, we've been without our dear friends, and we're so happy to have them back. And they are incredible, incredible people. So thank you for being here, Ranger Bethany.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
All right, so I'm going to go through a quick agenda for today, just so you know what we're going to be talking about. And then we will get into our program. This is our third of our series. So if you are interested in seeing our other two, those are available on YouTube. You can see those in the emails that we send out. And the first one was on the National Mall Gateway, and the second one was hosted by the National Archives and some of their Teach 250 content, which is incredible. So check those both out if you want to learn more about those. But for today, we're going to be talking about Veterans Day on the National Mall. We're going to be looking at some tours that are housed on the National Mall Gateway. And then Ranger Bethany is going to get in depth on both the history of the day of Veterans Day and then go through some of the memorials specifically and talk about them a little bit more and how maybe you would teach them in a classroom. We'll then end with how to make your own tours in the National Mall, and then we'll give you some upcoming announcements. So that's sort of the layout of the program for this evening. Feel free to put questions in the chat as they come up. We will do our best to stay on them, and if they're not there, myself or Ranger Bethany will kick them back and forth to each other. So before we get right into our program, we also want to thank one of our partner organizations, Destination DC. They do a fantastic job of bringing folks to DC and talking about how amazing and incredible Washington, DC is. For the 250, they are focused on a lot of these themes you can see on this side, on the slide right here. And if you want to learn more about what they're offering, you can go to their website, dc250.us. And once you're there, you can learn all the different things that DC has to offer. They'll be at our next webinar in December, and Lindsay Hill will be able to talk to you a little bit more about their program and what other things they offer. So let's get to the program for tonight. The National Mall is incredible for so many reasons. One of the best things for me, I think about all the time, is you can learn everything from what it is to be a citizen, what it is to be a patriot, what it is to be, what are the best ways to serve your country, right? When we think about that the National Mall can teach us all these different things, but the war memorials and these memorials really showcase a lot of the moments of our history that are really important and pivotal to where we are as a country. So we're going to hop right over to Ranger Bethany, and we'll get into a brief history of the Veterans Day. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so she can take over.
Actually, no, but I was on mute. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, so thank you, Bobby. So what we're going to do kind of really quickly here is go through a very brief timeline, sort of chronicling the history of Armistice Day, or today what we know as Veterans Day. And so our timeline begins in 1918. And it is on November 11th at 11 a.m. Paris time that a ceasefire armistice will take place. After about 4 years of fighting and the loss of millions of lives, Germany finally agrees to end the fighting, at least on the Western Front. And so this ceasefire kind of becomes kind of the unofficial end to the Great War. The Treaty of Versailles, which officially ended the war, will be signed the next year in June of 1919. So on the 11th, at the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month, we have a ceasefire. The very next year, President Woodrow Wilson will commemorate this occasion with a special message. And essentially, he is going to commemorate the heroic soldiers who fought in the war. He stated that the day would be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service with the gratitude for the victory, and suggests that Armistice Day, essentially, should be commemorated with things such as parades and public speaking, as well as 2 minutes of silence that should take place at 11 a.m. This is not at this point an official federal holiday. It's more of a proclamation and a suggestion coming from the President of the United States that it should be commemorated in some way. We're going to fast forward here a little bit to 1926. And this is when Congress kind of steps in and suggests that the president should authorize or enact a resolution to issue a proclamation in honor of the armistice. In this resolution, Congress notes that 27 states already have declared November 11th a legal holiday. But at this point, it's not yet a federal holiday. And so they encourage the president to encourage the states to fly flags in all public buildings. And so this is going to take place in 1926. If we bring it home a little bit here to the National Mall, in 1931, the District of Columbia War Memorial is dedicated exactly 13 years to the day and hour after the armistice takes effect. This memorial is kind of unique. This is a local memorial in a national park, so on federal property. And it's kind of a great example of some of the memorials that are being built in local communities to honor the residents of those communities for their service and sacrifice during the Great War. And that's exactly what the DC War Memorial does. At its dedication, it was kind of a big deal. The DC War Memorial, there was at one point a wooden bandstand that was in this location where different military performances would take place, musical performances. And so this memorial is meant to replace that wooden bandstand with a more permanent structure. Upon its dedication, not only was General John J. Pershing there, but DC resident and former, what would you call it? I guess conductor of the U.S. Marine Corps Band, John Philip Sousa, is also there at the dedication. And the memorial itself houses up to a 60-piece orchestra. And so the band would play there at the dedication of this memorial. Today, it's kind of what do we call sort of the off the beaten path a little bit. It does have the names of 499 residents of Washington who died during World War I. I think what is important to note about these names is that they are inscribed on the memorial in alphabetical order. And so there's no, indication of rank, of branch of service, of race, of gender. They're all up there as equals for what they contributed to during the war. And I think when we sort of look at some of the other memorials that we have built in the park, in Washington, D.C., we see this sort of similar effect take place. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we kind of virtually visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I will also point out that this is one of 3 places on the National Mall where one can get married. It is a very popular site, especially in the spring and summer. There are a lot of military weddings that take place. today at the DC War Memorial. So if you are in the Washington, DC area and you've never seen the DC War Memorial. It's actually kind of between the World War II Memorial and the Korean War Veterans Memorial. And I think, Bobby, at some point you're going to throw a map up there. We might just be able to point that out on the map as to the location of this particular site. So this all takes place in 1931, a local memorial built in ultimately what will become a national park. All right, about 7 years later, November 11th will officially be designated a legal holiday, and it is to be known as Armistice Day. And essentially, at this point, Armistice Day is to honor the veterans of World War I only. And again, like had been mentioned many, many times before, it's to be commemorated with parades and speeches, as well as suspension of business on this day. In 1954, there's going to be a suggestion that Armistice Day be renamed Veterans Day. And the reason for this is that the United States has been involved now in two additional wars. Of course, World War II, as well as the Korean War. And there are a number of veterans that feel it might be appropriate at this point to not only continue to honor the veterans of World War I, but the veterans of all wars. And so Dwight D. Eisenhower, who you can see there, is officially going to sign this into law. And so by 1954, we start referring to Armistice Day as Veterans Day, although it is still going to be commemorated at this point on November 11th. That is going to change for a very short amount of time. Interestingly enough, and I didn't actually know this, I learned this through sort of looking at the history of Veterans Day. In 1968, there is going to be a suggestion that ultimately becomes law to provide some uniformity, I guess you will, to certain national holidays. And the idea would be to create a 3-day weekend around many federal holidays, such as Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, as well as Veterans Day. And so many of the dates are going to be changed. So, for example, Washington's birthday from this moment forward would now be celebrated on the third Monday in February. Memorial Day is going to be changed to the last Monday in May. And Veterans Day is going to be moved to the fourth month in October. And again, the idea is this will allow families, it will allow kids to really have a 3-day weekend to get out and to explore and to really understand the purpose and meaning behind these holidays. And the whole idea is that it will be commemorated and celebrated in a new way. The problem was there were a lot of veterans, especially that became upset, especially with the changing of the date for Veterans Day, because they felt that it would lose the historical significance of being commemorated on the 11th of November, which was the armistice for World War I. And so there was a little bit of outcry associated with that. And so eventually in 1978, Veterans Day will be moved back to November 11th, regardless of what day of the week it falls on. So it is the date that is important as opposed to the day of the week. The rest of them actually stay the same. So we still commemorate Memorial Day on the last Monday in May. It's only Veterans Day that gets changed back. And so today, here on the National Mall, we commemorate Veterans Day in many different ways. Washington, D.C. does have a Veterans Day parade, but here in the park itself, we have all kinds of ceremonies at each of our military or war memorials, if you will, including the World War II Memorial, the Korean War Veterans Memorial, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the African American Civil War Memorial. All of these locations usually have a specific ceremony along with wreath laying, as well as a musical component and speeches. And so if you kind of look at the original intent of Armistice Day, we kind of stick to that tradition here in many of the commemoration celebrations that we have on the National Mall today. And from here, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the ways that you can specifically commemorate or sort of teach these very important historical moments using not only the gateway, but the National Mall itself. So I'm going to turn it back over to Bobby, who is going to share a couple of ways that we can do that before we get here to this tour itself. So, Bobby, I'm going to throw it back to you. Unless anybody has any questions, I will throw that out.
Do not see any questions in the chat. If you haven't had a chance to be on the National Mall for Veterans Day, it's an incredible experience. One of the things is that many of the ceremonies are often live streamed, so there's ways to be able to see that if you aren't close to DC. But it's really, truly, when you get to be on the mall for that day, you really get to see. It's a really emotional day on the mall, as you can imagine, and the live streams are incredible to see as well. So I would point those out. We can maybe even we can point folks to those if they are interested in that. I'm going to bring you on a tour of the National Mall Gateway for a moment. So if you haven't been to the National Mall Gateway, welcome. This is the National Mall Gateway. This is our civic platform designed to connect teachers and students to the National Mall, on the mall and in their classrooms, on the mall and in their classrooms back home. I'm the product manager for the National Mall Gateway, and I can go on and on and on about how much I love the Gateway. But what I'm going to talk about is really quick. I'm going to just give you a real quick overview of some of the other features, and then we're going to talk about the military and service tour. So on the National Mall Gateway, you'll see we have a carousel of all different images of different things you can see. We have these baseball cards, and each one of these baseball cards is a site card, which gives you reflection questions, history, beautiful photography of each of these memorials and sites. We have mall moments, which are articles and stories from the National Mall that you might not see if you're walking around. We have activities and lesson plans for educators, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And then we'll hop into some of those other things. So as Ranger Bethany was talking about, here is our map of the mall. So right now it's not a site quite yet, but here is the DC War Memorial, right in between the reflecting pool and the tidal basin. But when you're on the homepage, you can click our Explore, where you can see the site cards, the map, pretty straightforward, and then tours. So these are pre-built tours for you to explore the National Mall. We have right now, I think there's about 5 or 6, and more will be coming online soon. We have a presidential tour, cherry blossom tour, civil rights tour, a tour for all the folks who helped make the mall. And then an America 250 tour, because, you know, everything is semi-quincentennial this year. But let's talk about the military service and veterans tour. So right now, when you go to this tour, you'll see a few things. You'll see all the site cards for that tour, which is each one, you know, it will show you a map of how to walk around. This is a longer tour, right? We have this one built so that you can see all 4 of them. But starting at World War I and walking to the mall where World War II, Korea, and Vietnam are there, it's a longer walk, but it's an incredible walk. You can see the time of how long it should take you. Inside this time is built-in time to explore each memorial. We have educational activities tied to each of these sites. So if you're a teacher taking students on the tour in person, you could be using these activities in the classroom or on the mall itself. We have reflection questions as well for the mall, for this tour specifically. And then if you two things. If you hit get directions, it sends all the directions right to your phone, so you can map it right from your phone within whatever, if you use Google Maps or Apple Maps. Or if you're a little old school, if you click download map, you can PDF it. And I already PDF'd it right here for you. So you can print this out and as a little map, the reflection questions, and just sort of all, where you fit in the larger DC area. So that is for if you are walking around the mall while you're there on the mall itself. Also, if you are not on the mall, we can go back here and you can click onto your virtual tour. So the virtual tour will open up. Give it a second. And once the virtual tour opens up, it will bring you, there we go, start exploring the military and service and veterans tour. So it has all 4 sites for this, and you can kind of click around. This one, World War I, very we shot all these 360s in the morning at dawn, so there's a lot less tourists on it. And this one, Ranger Bethany and I were hanging out together for about 2.5 hours as the photographers took all these photos over and over, and we just talked in the early morning light. So little did we know that we'd be talking here a year and a half later. But so you can click through each of these tours, click through each of these memorials, and kind of click around. These green points will give you different vantage points. These yellow points will explain what you're looking at. So it kind of gives you, this is a pop-up video, so to speak. And it allows you to sort of, there's a digital layer on top of them all. I'll just click through the others just for a brief moment. So we'll start with World War I. So here we go. Ranger, Bethany, do you want me to show a little bit more of this? Or do you want me to you're going to be talking through it more. So do you want me to show virtually a little bit of each one? Or do you feel like we can hop to your slides? You tell me.
No, I think you should do just a very quick virtual tour of each of the spots. So everybody gets kind of an overall view of what each space looks like.
Great. So we'll go chronologically in terms of when the wars were. So we have World War I, and then we'll head over to World War II. So World War II, this is right on the National Mall, kind of where it's situated, between the Washington Monument, and then the reflecting pool is over here, and the Lincoln Memorial is there. If you are a teacher and you are showing these virtual tours in your class, when you wait about 5, there you go, the tour will start to spin and pan on its own, right? So it allows you to keep talking, and the visuals will move while you're talking, which I think is fantastic. You can click around a little bit more. Again, these yellow points. Let's bring us over to Korean War. So here we go. Maybe we could put music in next time. That would be great. But lots of different angles you can get to these are incredible for a few reasons, but I think that most of them have very few people in them. There's there are people in them, of course. The Rangers who are with us did not let us disturb the folks who are on the mall, because that is who the mall is for. The mall is for the people who are there, which is understandable. So, but really, I think that these are, when we shot them at dawn, they are, sort of kind of reflect the solemnity of the place, and allow, I think, students to really, you're not there, but I think this is an immersive feel to what you're getting to see there. And then we can click one more spot here, and you can kind of see the pool over here. And then we'll bring us over to the Vietnam one. So we'll start as you walk in. There's many things. I think we'll talk a lot about each of the memorials, but one of the things I really always point out, by the way, I was a tour guide in the mall for 8 years, and I've taken 10,000 students on the National Mall. One of the things I always used to talk to students about is when you come to this memorial, when you're up here, you can hear the city, you can hear the noise of the city. And as you walk deeper into the memorial, as you go here, it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. And it really sort of gives you this effect of this sense of reverence that is really is profound. I feel like when you're walking around most of the memorials, but I feel like the Vietnam Memorial does that incredibly well. And then let's see what bring us to. Let's see if it brings us over here. Yep. And then it brings us to the other. There's some other parts of this of the Vietnam Memorial. We have the Vietnam Women's Memorial over here. You can click around and see that. And I think there's. Let me see if it brings us over to the other soldiers, to the three soldiers up top. And then here we go. So really, these are fantastic for students to just kind of poke around and look around and explore on their own. More and more yellow points are being added. That is as we just launched in September, but we're going to be adding more of these points. So as these more points will be there, students can sort of read this out for themselves. All right, I'm going to start to kick this back over to you, Bethany. So if there are any questions about the gateway, feel free to put them in the chat and I can answer them now. And if not, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on each of these memorials with Bethany. You are on mute.
Of course I am. I will get back into the practice of this. Oh, and I stopped sharing. Whew.
You're doing great.
All right,
There
here
we
we
go.
go. So yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of go on an in-depth tour, the military service and veterans tour, and we are going to use some of the reflection questions to explore a specific aspect of each of these spots. Now, there are so much that you can talk about and experience and look at, but we simply don't have time tonight. So we're going to kind of keep it specific. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in a different order than what Bobby went. So we're going to go in order in which the memorials were dedicated or established, as opposed to in chronological order by when the event took place. So we are going to start at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which was dedicated in November of 1982, not exactly on Veterans Day. It was actually dedicated on a Saturday. But this memorial was really kind of important because it opens the door in many ways to the additional war memorials, if you will, that will eventually be built in the park. If you look at the first three memorials that we have, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, they're kind of setting a precedent for building presidential memorials on the National Mall. And I don't think at this time anyone was really considering or thinking about building memorials that honor the service and sacrifice of our veterans until the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And this was a memorial that is here because of the veterans themselves. And I think if we look a little bit about the reception that our veterans received when they came home, they didn't get the ticket tape parades. They didn't get the thank yous for your service, for your sacrifice. So it was a much different experience for them. And so because of that, several of them actually went and petitioned Congress for the right to build this national memorial on the National Mall to serve really as a tangible symbol of recognition for the service and sacrifice of all of the Vietnam veterans. This is also meant to be a place of healing. And so one of the questions, reflection questions that you could ask students, which I think is probably going to be thrown in the chat box here. There we go. The question is, why is it important, do you think, to have military memorials like the Vietnam Veterans Memorial on the National Mall? Any suggestions as to why this might be important? Help visualize the cost of war. Absolutely. And this memorial does this in a very emotional way. So the memorial itself, the center element is this polished black granite V-shaped wall. Today it contains the names of 58,281 men and women who were killed or still declared missing from the Vietnam War. One um, side of the memorial points towards the Washington Monument. The other side points towards the Lincoln Memorial. Yeah, and I definitely agree that our students need to see and connect to what our military has given to our country. And again, very much reflected here in the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Today on the wall, it's estimated that we still have about just over 1,500 individuals who are still declared missing from the Vietnam War. And so it's very important to continue to recognize that sacrifice that many of them made during this war. The memorial itself was designed by a 21-year-old college student by the name of Maya Lin. She had sort of researched many of the military memorials that you can find all around the world. And one of the things that she felt was missing in many ways from each of these places, not all, but many of them, was the individual service, the individual sacrifice that these soldiers themselves made. And so when she is thinking about what her design should look like, she does find it very important to include all the names of those who are missing and all the names of those who were killed up on the wall. They are up there in chronological order by casualty date. So when their death was confirmed or when they were declared missing is where you'll find them on the wall. To her, that was important for two reasons. The first is those that serve and fell together are internally engraved on the wall forever together. And she wanted it to be chronological because she recognized that many of the names might repeat themselves. So think of a name like John Smith, which is pretty common. If you put it just alphabetical order, you would have maybe 30 John Smiths right next to one another. And for friends and family who are coming to see this memorial to find their John Smith, it would be difficult to do that. So to have them up there chronologically, it will be much easier to find a loved one on the wall. And then within that chronological order, these names are alphabetized. So you can see a new day when you have a break or a restart of of the alphabet there. There's nothing separating the names on the wall. Again, we don't see branches of service. We don't see rank. We don't see where they came from. The only symbol next to each name is their designation. And so if you see a diamond, that means their death has been confirmed. And we have a lot of diamonds on the wall. That's the most common symbol that you will find. If you see a plus sign, like you see right here, that means the individual is still missing. And if you see a combination of these two, a diamond within the plus sign, this indicates that in 1982, when this wall was dedicated, that person was still considered missing, but there's been enough information that has come forward to officially declare that they were killed during the war. And so on Memorial Day, status changes will be made and little diamonds will be engraved within that plus sign. And so, again, in many ways, this is a living memorial. It continues to be updated each year as new information comes about. But again, as Aaron said, it definitely helps us visualize the overall cost of war by seeing just name after name after name after name engraved here in the memorial. Another tradition that we see at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and this one began even before it was officially dedicated, are tributes that are left to individuals that we have on the wall. And hundreds of thousands of items have been placed next to panels since 1982, and they are just about anything you could possibly think of. There is a website, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, who is a partner and really the organization that helped get this memorial built. On on their website, they have a pretty good collection online that you can see all of the stuff that has been left down at the wall since its dedication. Medals, uniform pieces, patches, letters, thank yous from future generations, especially students who, weren't alive during the Vietnam War, but are thanking members of their own community for their service and their sacrifice. Teddy bears, baseballs. It's a very emotional place to see all of these items that are left in tribute to those that are on the wall. We do collect each of them. We category the date we found them, as well as their location on the wall. And right now, all of them are just being housed kind of in an archives. We don't have the space at this point to display all of these items. But again, it's a great way to make that connection to the memorial. Why is it important to have these spaces? Because it is a place of healing, and in many ways, leaving these tributes is an act of healing, particularly for the veterans that are bringing them down. And so it's a great tradition that has been left. It has carried on a little bit to some of our other military memorials that we have now in the park. Does anybody have any questions about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial? So again, a great question to kind of start out with, whether it's you're doing the virtual tour or whether you're inside the park, is why is it important to have these places? Another thing that I will point out, kind of piggybacking on what Bobby said a little bit earlier, is that I think one of the great experiences that you could have at any of these memorials is when you visit them, speaking to the veterans of the war itself, getting that information firsthand, even having the opportunity to say thank you for your service, your sacrifice. It's a very, very powerful experience, especially for students who might be seeing these spaces for the very first time. And yeah, so thank you for throwing that website in on the chat box if you all want to take a look at that. Again, it's a great it gives a great understanding of those things that have been left down at the wall.
Bethany, one other thing to say to you, I don't have a question, but I've talked to students about the names in order, the chronological order, for all my time, but I did not really know what you said, actually, where you talked about how making sure that it would separating the different names, making sure that the John Smiths or the same folks, the different names, because when you go to the other memorials, there's a list where it says all the same names all in a row. And in some ways, it's powerful to see the names, but seeing 4 people with the same name, it feels a little bit less of a personal connection. But seeing it chronologically, that and how it's separated from that moment from when they died is really incredible. I haven't really thought about that before. So thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, no, of course. And again, that's in many ways Maya Lin's way of recognizing those individual contributions, those individual sacrifices, just among many, many names, kind of in some ways an overwhelming amount of names that you see there on the wall. So it brings, again, a very powerful experience to that particular memorial, very emotional experience. Looking at the Korean War Veterans Memorial, so this one will be dedicated in 1995. And in many ways, this memorial sort of uses some of the experiences from the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in some of its design elements. This one is unique to some degree because the 12-person advisory board that was established to oversee the creation of this memorial, all 12 individuals were veterans themselves. And they really wanted the Korean War Veterans Memorial to reflect the overall soldier's experience. And so I think a great reflection question for this memorial is, how does this design reflect those experiences that soldiers experienced during the Korean War? This is definitely one of my favorites in terms of overall designs. The sculptor of what we call the field of service, these statues, he was a World War II veteran and infantryman who served during the Battle of the Bulge under extremely difficult weather conditions. And he was also an artist. And so he will be commissioned to create these 7 foot tall stainless steel statues that represents, yeah, the soldiers in the field. And if you take a look at them and the way that they're designed, do you see anything that kind of gives us an understanding of the experiences that they felt during the war? Specifically the way they're dressed. Yeah, ponchos. Kind of the overall design of the memorial. I think that there is the look on their faces. Yeah, that is always I think something that is very important to point out. One of the things that you might notice, and I think in the next picture, whoops, if I move on, yeah. So one of the things that you might notice in this design, if you look closely, you will see that this group of soldiers, they're moving out of a forested area where they have some measure of, oh, what's what I'm looking for? Um, they're not as exposed, right? And as they're moving out of this forested area, they're moving into a clearing. And so they are completely exposed at this point, not only to perhaps enemy gunfire, but also to the elements. And so they are constantly looking around. And as you move your way through this memorial, these soldiers are looking at you. So yes, the look on their faces are very, very important part of the design feature for this memorial. And then the ponchos themselves reflect the cold, rainy climate that they served in. And so you see that reflected there as well. Is there anything else that you notice in these images that might help us understand their experiences, particularly the obstacles that they faced? So I kind of scroll through some of these images here. So one of the things that you might see here are these granite strips, and you'll notice that they are in front of each statue. So each statue has this granite strip that is running right by them. And these represent obstacles that this individual has to overcome in order to reach the objective, which in this case is going to be the flag. And those obstacles could be anything. It could be physical. The fact that they're carrying a 60-pound backpack, that there's snow up to their knees, that they're marching for 15 miles uphill, being exposed to all of these elements, all of these, potentially enemy gunfire. But it also could be emotional. Many of these soldiers are being sent to a location that they never even heard of before. They are away from their families. They're away from their home front. They are missing maybe perhaps birthdays, perhaps holidays. And so we see that emotional, we see that physical obstacles being represented in all these granite strips that they have to then overcome, move around, go over in order to reach their objective. Maybe a sense of isolation and individual struggles. Yep. One of the interesting things about this memorial is that there was some consideration given to placing 38 statues within the field of service. And 38 would, of course, symbolize the 38th parallel, the dividing line between the North and the South. One of the things that the advisory board noted, though, is that in many ways, these soldiers might not be standing that close together if they are out on out on patrol. And so they wanted to lessen the amount and provide a little bit of distance, a little bit of space between each of the soldiers. They're still connected. They're still relying on one another. But yeah, they have these individual experiences happening here within this field. And so, yeah, that's a great thing to point out. Does anybody know how they got the additional 19 number though? Because the 38th parallel is still symbolized in this memorial. Anybody know how they did it? This is a great design feature that they came up with. So yeah, if I show you the wall that's on the side, what do you notice on this wall?
I can answer. I can answer.
Go ahead, Bobby. What is it?
The reflections.
So there's two things. The first, as Bobby said, there is the reflection of each of the 19 statues. So 19 statues, 19 reflections. There's our 38th parallel being symbolized here in this memorial. But the other thing that you'll notice is on the wall, there are 2,500 images of kind of what you would consider to be the support units to the infantrymen on the ground. And one of the things that you definitely see in this picture here are women. And one of the individuals that was on the advisory board was Colonel Rosemary McCarthy, who was a Korean War veteran herself. And so she wanted to make sure that everybody's experience would be captured in this memorial, specifically here on this wall of faces. What makes this memorial, I guess, a little bit unique, or this wall a little bit unique, is just because your image is here, it doesn't mean that you were killed during the war. So it's not necessarily like the wall that we have at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. In fact, many of those that are on this wall were never notified that their images was going to be used in this national memorial. And many of our veterans actually found out for the first time that they are here by visiting this memorial. So we've had visitors point themselves out. We've had them point their mothers and their fathers and their brothers and their sisters out. So it's kind of a great, another great experience that you can have at these memorials. And then, get to listen to their overall experience. But yeah, so in addition to those reflections, we see the images. The only alterations made to the images, you won't find names, you won't find ranks, you won't find branches of service. What you will find is that they are grouped by the task that they were given. So you have your pilots together, your sailors together, artillery together, medical together. If you kind of look down here in the corner, you see a doctor here on the screen. And so again, these are the men and women that had, provided support during the Korean War. So again, another really important feature that helps us understand the experience. And this by far is one of my all-time favorite pictures. If you have an opportunity to come down to this memorial or bring students down to this memorial during the wintertime and to see snow here on this memorial, it really puts what these experiences into perspective. And you can almost imagine them trudging through the snow, up the hills, through the mountains of North Korea as they're on patrol. And so it provides this just really emotional, amazing visual experience when visiting this memorial. Okay, so I got the 12-minute check here, so I'm gonna I'm gonna zoom a little bit through these. So World War II Memorial. One of the interesting reflection questions that you can use is how does this memorial, what are some similarities or some differences between the World War II Memorial and the two memorials that we just saw? And one of the big difference is in the name here. What do you see that's left out? Veterans. So the word veterans is missing from the official title of this memorial. And that's because not only does it honor the men and women in uniform, but it also honors those that served on the home front. So anybody who worked in the factories, on the farms, who bought war bonds, who participated in recycling programs, all of the individuals that in some way contributed to the war effort will find something within this memorial that commemorates their service. And so that's one kind of big difference that we have between the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the Korean War Veterans Memorial. And we can see that service reflected here on the wreaths that we have on the pillars. And so each pillar has two different style of wreaths. They just alternate around the memorial. One is made of oak. This represents the industrial might. One's made of wheat, reflecting the agricultural contributions from those on the home front. We also see that a little bit here in the fact that we have 56 pillars, which represent all of the states and the territories that provided this united effort to support the war in a varieties of ways, including sending its citizens, its residents off to war and overseas. Another kind of difference that you can point out is that instead of having names engraved in this memorial, the ultimate price of freedom is marked not with names, but with gold stars. And so we have 48,000, or sorry, 4,080 gold stars on the wall, and each star represents 100 Americans killed during the war. But one of the unique aspects of it is that each star is in some way a little bit different. So they came from individual molds. And so in addition to honoring many people, it also shows the individual sacrifices. Again, the individual efforts, the individual service, the individual sacrifice is a theme that kind of runs throughout all of our military war memorials that we have in the park. So 405,000 roughly Americans killed during the war. Kind of imagine how big that wall would be if each individual name was engraved on it. The other sort of thing that you can kind of maybe see that these memorials have in common is sort of these visual features. For especially students who weren't alive at the time that these conflicts, these wars are taking place, sometimes it's really important to see visual elements of what it was like to serve on the home front, what it was like to participate in battles overseas. And so you see that in these bronze reliefs that we have here. The one on top shows a home front scene. This is a family listening to President Roosevelt talk about the attack of Pearl Harbor. And you see sort of this multi-generational family. And you can kind of look at that and wonder how their lives are going to be impacted and how their lives are going to change now that the United States has entered into World War II. And then below that, that is a scene that's probably one of the most recognizable scenes from the war itself, that there is D-Day. And you see sort of the storming of the beaches of Normandy and the extreme loss of life that took place there on that day. So again, seeing those visuals and having that experience to sort of understand what it was like during World War II, I think is a very important design feature within this memorial. And then if we kind of carry that over to the next memorial, the World War I Memorial, which is our newest, it was officially dedicated in 2021. Although the part of the memorial that I'm about to show you, I think was dedicated in September of last year. So it came a little bit after the memorial itself was opened. The National World War I Memorial was built within a memorial itself called Pershing Park. So there was a statue, I guess there still is, of John Pershing, but this was expanded to include or become a national memorial. And to recognize the service and sacrifice of more than just Pershing himself, although his role was incredibly important as well. And this particular piece of art is called A Soldier's Journey. If you haven't had a chance to see it in person, looking at the virtual tour that we have on the Gateway is a great way to experience this particular piece of art. And essentially what it does is it shows us 5 different momentous occasions of one soldier's journey throughout the war. And I want to go kind of quickly through them, but one of the things that I want to point out, and I think sometimes we don't think about this when we see these memorials, is that this sculpture begins and ends with the next generation. So here in the departure scene, we have this soldier whose daughter is handing him the helmet and essentially sending him off to his destiny, which is World War I. And at this point, you have this soldier who's kind of caught between devotion to his family and service to his country. And then in the middle of that, you have his wife, who is a symbol of the home front, who will continue to carry on and even possibly have different roles during this conflict itself. And so the very first scene we see is moving from the home front to the sort of military aspect of his new role. And the next scene we see is initiation. So here he's moving from his family, but he's kind of be taken in by a new family. the individuals that he is going to serve with. And as again, we kind of continue to move through, one of the things that they thought was very important is to show the overall American experience of not just one soldier, but of many soldiers. This particular soldier represents one of the 350,000 African Americans who served during World War I, and of one of the 40,000 that served in actual combat. Many of them, such as the Harlem Hellfighters, would see some of the most brutal combat, as well as be on the front lines for an incredibly long time. So as we look and we follow this soldier's journey, we're also going to see the overall experience sort of be reflected here. We move out of initiation into the ordeal, full into combat. One of the things that I think is sort of remembered about World War I is this area called No Man's Land, which was sort of this desolate space between the trenches, that was marked with barbed wire and craters from bombs. And it was kind of considered a place where no man can survive. And yet here you have these groups of soldiers that are willing to try and cross the no man's land in service to their country. And so you see them being led here. And then the aftermath. And I think this is one of the most emotional parts of the entire sculpture. So here you have that soldier that has survived this very difficult, life-changing moment in his life. And as you look at his face, he kind of has that 1,000-yard stare. He is now carrying the both physical and emotional tolls and scars from his experiences during this war. And if you look behind him, you see that not only has it had a toll on him, but it also has had a toll on those he served with, as well as those that are still on the home front. And so he is forever going to be changed by this experience. But as we move forward, we also see the return. We see one soldier looking back. He is kind of reflecting upon all that has happened thus far, but we also see soldiers moving forward as war is left behind and the world returns to peacetime. And the last part of the sculpture's journey, or the soldier's journey, I think is probably the most important. So in the beginning, she is handing her father the helmet, and at the end, her father is handing it back to her. And does anybody know what she sees in that helmet?
I don't even know. This is new to me, so I'm excited to hear the answer.
It's an amazing piece. It's an amazing piece of symbolism. So yeah, so that's a great question that you could ask your students. You can't decide if she's looking at the past or if she's looking at the future. And so she's actually inside that helmet. She is, oh, and is it a reflection of herself? To some degree, yes, I would say it is. Because in that helmet, she is seeing World War II. So she is now being handed the future, if you will. And in it, she's seeing herself being reflected in this war that is to come, and that experience and the responsibilities and the scars, emotional, physical, are all now being handled or handed to the next generation, which I think is an amazing, I guess, end, if you will, to this soldier's journey. And I think this is something that definitely can be used in the classroom, especially for younger generations to sort of see what responsibilities are being handed over to them even today. So I know I kind of threw a lot at you, but I know that, do we have a few more minutes, Bobby? Oh, man.
Well, we can, if there's any questions, feel free. We can do some questions. You haven't been here for these, this is the first one the Rangers are back for. So, it's great that you can take as much time as you can have. That's totally fine. Great question. We have, why did it take so long for the World War I memorial to be built?
Yeah, so I think to some degree, if you look at the order in which our memorials are being built, we're kind of going backwards in terms of um, which wars are being commemorated, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with voices, with people petitioning Congress and asking for these memorials to be built. And unfortunately, I don't believe we have any World War I soldiers still alive. And so it really sort of took a long time, um, I think, because of that. And it's really, again, as I said, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial being built really opens the door for many of these additional war memorials that we see now in the park. And I think that it was just a matter of kind of looking around and wondering, well, why don't we have a National World War I memorial here in Washington, D.C.? And then looking at spaces that could potentially be expanded to include more of the national experience. And I think Pershing Park was a great place to do that. And so I think if that answers the question, I think that's why it took so long. I just don't think that at the time it was being, sort of looked at. And it's really in many ways the public who gets these memorials built. It's the veterans themselves. It's the families of the veterans who, really sort of lead the charge, lead the fight to get them created.
We have one more question from Leanne, a teacher in Tennessee, asks, are there new memorials currently in progress?
So there is. So we actually have another war memorial, Desert Storm's Desert Shield. It's currently being built. I want to say, I think next year is when they wanted to dedicate it. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. A lot of times when you're building memorials outdoors, the weather has a lot to play in how quickly they get created. And then I think there's also going to be somewhere, I don't know they've chosen location yet, a memorial to, or at least a statue to suffrage somewhere in the park. We have what's called the Belmont Hall House, which was the headquarters for the National Women's Party, who fought for suffrage. And I think there is a sort of a push to expand upon that and to at least have a statue somewhere in the park that draws attention to the suffrage movement. So I think those are the two that I know about as of right now. Although there are a lot of petitions in Congress, I think for a very, very long time, and I wish Ranger Jen was here, the John Adams Memorial has been discussed for decades. And John doesn't have a memorial quite yet on the National Mall. So yeah, there's always someone looking to see if a statue or memorial could be built somewhere in the park.
Oh, yep. And there's one more. Daiki, one of the other members of the National Mall Gateway team, point out there's a fallen journalist memorial,
Fallen
and
journal.
that one is also being built, or in the
Yes.
process, or in the stages of that as well. Thank you,
Yep.
Daiki. Thank you, Daiki. Bethany, can I take the screen back when you have a
Yes.
moment, and I will wrap things up? If
There
there's
you
any other
go.
questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll just cover two more quick things, and then we will. First things first. Let me just say thank you so much, Bethany. That was incredible, and I learned something. I actually learned a bunch from it, so it was really incredible. So thank you so much. Let me share my screen, and then we will just talk for. Great. All right. So really fast. One of the things that we would love for teachers to do is to create their own account on the National Mall Gateway. Once you create an account, you can build your own tours. You can do all sorts of, you can access all of our educational resources. We showed you some tours that were pre-built already really quickly. If you wanted to build your own tour, I'm logged in. So you log in, then you can say it, you want to do a tour on the 70s, right? So we would do you were like the 60s and 70s. So we would do Martin Luther King, Vietnam, uh, Lincoln Memorial, and I think that's what I would do for if I was doing a tour in the 60s and 70s, right? Would you add anything else, Bethany? 60s and 70s. All right. So I would think those. I think that's what I go. If you got one more, let me know. And then when you build those tours, you click up here, and when it takes a second, it will create a tour map for you. So as that's building, give that a second. There we go. And then you can have your own tour. Once it shows up, there it is. And you can see how long it would take you, and you can add your own sites to it, really, so that then you can sort of also, if you're with students, you can estimate how long it's going to be walking around the mall, because sometimes it takes a little bit longer. We're hoping in a future version to have a slider for middle schoolers, elementary schoolers, and high schoolers, so you know how much longer it would take with walking around with each of those groups. I'm going to bring us back to the PowerPoint to close us out here. Let's go back to present. All right. Let's jump to the end. Let's start here. All right. So a couple last things for us. Um, so the Trust, National Mall Gateway team, and the National Park Service will be at the National Council on Social Studies in Washington, D.C. Next week, which feels we've been talking about for so long. We're so excited to be there. Thousands of social studies teachers from across the country will be in D.C. If you're going to be there, say so in the chat. And if you are there, please come over. We'll have a booth in the exhibition hall, and we'll have a couple poster sessions, one on the National Mall Gateway and one on volunteerism on the National Mall. So we would love to talk with you and meet you in real life. That would be great if you're there. If you also come by, sneak peek. We'll be giving out posters that we made of the National Mall with an organization called Periodic Presidents, so you can pick up one of these for your classroom. Also, if you sign up for a teacher account, we will be sending out to the first 250 teachers who sign up for an educator account. We will be sending out classroom swag packs for the semi-quincentennial. So sign up for an account, and then we will reach out when those are ready to send them out to you. Upcoming webinars in December, we will have another webinar a little bit more lighthearted, focusing on some of the recreational pieces of the National Mall. In January, we'll have another webinar called Beyond the March, and we'll focus on Martin Luther King's legacy in Washington, D.C. I think I'm going to wrap up here. Bethany, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I just want to say thank you all for joining us this evening. Take that opportunity to explore the Gateway. And I hope to see you all out on the National Mall at some point.
We are incredibly grateful for many things. We are incredibly grateful to have our friends at the National Park Service back and here with us on the mall and here with us tonight. Thank you. We're grateful for all of you for being here tonight, and we wish you all a great holiday week, and hope your travel is easy and your food is delicious. Thanks again for joining us tonight, and thanks again, Bethany, and have a great week.
Take care, everyone.